Welcome to another edition of the Fawkes Report, the only internet political commentary show named after a 16th century Catholic radical who allegedly tried to blow up Parliament. Allegedly. So once again, we have another really interesting show. Lots of stuff going on in the world today that I'm going to get to and I'm going to cover. So, one of the biggest developments that we've had is, of course, now has been officially the first 100 days of Joe Biden's presidency. The new Joe Biden, the crotchety old man running the show. People really haven't seen a whole lot of him because he's been kind of absent, been kind of hiding in the sidelines and things like that old people are apt to do. But age really isn't a big factor for me. But I will say I'm going to talk a little bit about his first 100 days and some of the things I thought were, I guess, bad, and some of the things that I thought were okay. By and large, there hasn't been a whole lot to comment on one way or the other, just because, really, he's kind of a placeholder president, and I think we all kind of expected that. He isn't, Mr. Hope and Change, but he's not Mr. Doom and Gloom either. He's there, he's taken over for Trump, and that's all they ever really wanted him to do. But there have been some things that have been a little interesting and out there. And of course, some cultural developments. Rebel Wilson, a woman of a particularly large size historically, has lost a lot of weight, and I talk about how that has affected sort of the culture war, and how that affected the whole SJW body image movement that was so popular back in the 2014s and the 2015s, and it's just to see how culture has changed. And of course, the Russia investigation, the old witch hunt, the old Mueller's witch hunt, is still going on in a certain form, as now Rudy Giuliani is being attacked for, I guess, working with people in Ukraine. Now, of course, Ukraine and Russia are two completely different places. Some people may be confused by that. And maybe some people in Russia would like to believe that they're the same place. I'm not sure. But it's very clear that he's being targeted mostly for his connections to Trump and Trump's administration, and not so much just because of anything he may or may not have done with any oligarchs in Ukraine. But let's start with, of course, good old Mr. Joe Biden and his first 100 days in office. So, one of the things that's been very, very interesting about Joe Biden is, again, we've got to his first 100 days. And so far, I would say pretty standard stuff. He did some liberal things like push for some tax increases and the Keystone XL pipeline, some things like this, but nothing really that groundbreaking. But funny enough, one of the things that has impressed me is he's shown a small little tad bit of an ability to challenge the establishment on things like Afghanistan, recognizing the Armenian genocide, which I thought was pretty impressive. But he hasn't followed through on the Afghanistan thing. At least he recognized the Armenian genocide, which was pretty cool. But, as always, the people hanging around on the Never Trump right will never get off the fact that Trump was once president. And we have a person by the name of Max Boot, most famous for pointing out how interneters masturbate to anime and worship Hitler. That Max Boot. Neocon, anti-Trump, never Trump guy. He commented on Biden's first 100 days in office, and he talked about how much better it was than Trump as a conservative columnist. Max Boot, a conservative columnist for the Washington Post, on Tuesday laid bare the stark difference between the first 100 days of President Joe Biden's administration and that of his predecessor, ex-president Donald Trump. In an essay titled, "First 100 Days Were Sheer Craziness. Biden's Are Sheer Competence," Boot said Biden, whose White House will reach the landmark on Friday, had an unbeatable advantage in the sheer fact that he is not Trump. Simply by not inciting his supporters to attack the Capitol and not telling them to take hydrochlorine, President Biden looks infinitely better than his predecessor, says Boot, who quit the GOP in 2016 upon Trump's takeover of the party. The columnist then argued why Biden is more than just anti-Trump, pointing out his scandal-free first months in office, his pick of well-qualified appointees instead of the relatives and far-right extremists, and his reassertion of America as a key player on the global stage. Biden hasn't gotten everything right, Boot acknowledged, citing the president's pullout from Afghanistan, his unwillingness to rejoin the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and his hesitancy to raise refugee admissions, as he considers to be errors. But you have to give Biden credit. He is actually trying to do his job, rather than simply drawing to attention himself, Biden, Boot concluded. These kind of people are just really, you can't even deal with these kind of people, these kind of Max Boot conservatives talking about pulling out of Afghanistan would just be the worst thing in the world. Because we've gotten so much from being there, just sitting there in the desert, dealing with the Taliban for the past, 19 years, 20 years actually, because we went there in 2001, close to 20 years. We've gotten so much out of that. So much has been accomplished there. We actually caught bin Laden 15 years after we were there, and he was in Pakistan and not Afghanistan. But it's so important that we stay there. And the Trans-Pacific Partnership, I'm sure that was so important. And he's so in favor of refugees. Like, look how much of not a racist he is. He doesn't masturbate to anime. That's so wonderful. Now, just looking at a couple of his other complaints, like by simply not inciting his supporters to attack the Capitol and not telling them to not take hydroxychloroquine, President Biden looks infinitely better than his predecessor. Well, first off, neither one of those things happened during Trump's first 100 days in office. The attacking the Capitol thing happened really after Trump's presidency was right about to end. And hydroxychloroquine, that happened, well close to 4 years into his term. And of course, at the time that he said that, hydroxychloroquine was considered to be somewhat effective against the coronavirus, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm thinking about the right thing. Yeah, so whatever. Some people had said that there was evidence for that to work. But he talks about how Trump just picked relatives and far-right extremists to run everything in his government. And that could not be further from the truth. It really couldn't be. Because the reality is, the only people in his administration who could have been considered, off the map, off the grid, more, probably not even far right in many cases, but really the only controversial picks he had were Michael Flynn as National Security Advisor, Steve Bannon as White House supervisor of some sort. I don't even remember what the position was, but he was in there. And then I believe Rex Tillerson as his Secretary of State. Those were the only people that he appointed that were off the grid. The rest of it was James Mattis as Secretary of Defense. Betsy DeVos as the head of the Department of Education. Do you think Betsy DeVos was a Trumper? She was a Trump Republican? No, she was an establishment Republican. She built her life on the establishment. It's the exact same person that Jeb Bush or Mike Pence or any other Republican would have picked. And the other factor is, the reality is, all the people that were considered off the grid were people that were targeted and removed from office very early into his administration. Michael Flynn was the shortest serving national security advisor in U.S. history. Knocked out, I think it was even before the inauguration. It may have been a little bit after. But knocked out very early. Steve Bannon, of course, isolated extremely quickly in the White House due to the fact that he was in opposition on Syria, in opposition on lots of other things. kicked out very quickly, run out the door, and then, had himself just completely destroyed by Trump later on. And probably for good reason, because he actually was trying to play to the establishment and started trying to side with the Russia investigation. So he probably deserved that. But the reality is, Trump's presidency was never run by far-right extremists. Trump was basically almost the entire time the only voice for any kind of alternative right-wing position in the administration. The rest of it was all establishment hacks, just the entire way through. And so you could see why people like Max Boot aren't taken seriously, and why nobody listens to those people, and nobody ever should listen to those people. But by and large, as far as Biden's first term in the White House is concerned, I mean, it hasn't terrified me. It hasn't blown me away. I haven't thought it was good. I haven't thought it was bad. It's just been very meh. And at the end of the day, I think that's exactly what the powers that be wanted him for. That's exactly why they wanted him in office. Was they wanted somebody who would be boring, who would move the chains a little bit. But I do kind of wonder. There hasn't seemed to be as much pushback to things like Biden pulling out of Afghanistan as there has been to Trump. And I think the reason for that is that the powers that be have decided, you know what, let's give our guy a few opportunities to do some populist things that these populist people like. Because if we do that, we can kind of appease the mob a little bit, throw them a few grains of food, just let them, have a few things that they want so that they'll calm down. They won't bother us as much. Just say, look, guys, we're doing exactly what you want. And when they do that, they can continue with their own policies as usual because they think things are changing when things are really not changing. So really, how sincere is Biden about this stuff? It's hard to say. Pull the Marco Rubio right there. It's an ancient reference. So if we could talk about some other things going on, some basic stuff. So I talked about this in a short video, but FDA is considering banning menthol cigarettes because 85% of black smokers love menthol cigarettes. And that's exactly what we need for racial equality, is to ban black people's favorite cigarette. Just everything they enjoy just needs to be banned because it's bad for them. And we know better than them because we're not racist. We're altruists. And as I've said before, is that exactly what black people want? It's just another reason for the government to want to arrest them, to want to take something away from them, right? They need another, they just don't need another black market, developing in their communities. That'll cause crime and violence and so many problems. That's exactly what they want. So SNL is basically run by communists. I think we've known this for a while now, but this has finally made it official. As some members of Saturday Night Live's cast just cannot stand that Elon Musk, this billionaire who builds spaceships and builds cybernetic technology and electric cars and trying to revolutionize the world as we know it. This guy, they cannot stand that this guy is trying to become a person on their show. He's trying to host their show because he's a billionaire. He's a 1% Bernie Sanders, right? I guess he's controversial now because he downplayed the risk of the coronavirus at one point and said he wanted to get a vaccine. And, I guess he did other controversial things. I mean, it's Elon Musk. He's amazing. It doesn't matter what he said. He's amazing. But people are complaining about this. So they're just like, let's find out. So one of the cast members said that the only CEO they wanted to do a sketch with is Sherry O'Terry, I guess, who is a former cast member of SNL. Sherry O'Terry, American actress who's very old. and somewhat attractive and lives in Pennsylvania. And she's the CEO of a music publishing company of music. And Patricia Dino Terry. She has Italian ancestry. She's so amazing. This is the only person in the 1% that they respect because she sells music or something. I don't know. But, all they could do was complain about it. And there's another thing where they posted a tweet from Bernie Sanders. The 50 wealthiest people in this country own more wealth than 165 million Americans. And he called that a moral obscenity. And they don't want to be with this guy. They don't want him on the show because he's rich, because he has wealth, and because he's part of the 1%. If you need any more evidence that you're totally a hopeless communist, it's that because you cannot deal with Elon Musk, who is an amazing, incredible man who is changing the world as we know it. He's just that incredible, and you can't deal with him. So, but, that's the world. That's life. People aren't going to respect successful people. They're not going to respect wealth, and there's not much you can do about that, and it's sad. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about Rebel Wilson. This woman that's impressed me. She's impressed me. As you can see, she is now a quite attractive woman of a very voluptuous character, as you can tell. I don't know if there's a video to this. I thought there was supposed to be a video of this, but it's pictures. You can tell that she is so much more fit and so much more in shape. And it's no disrespect to big gals. It's not to say you can't be a big boned gal or a large gal and be attractive. But the reality is the SJW establishment industrial complex for nearly a decade was telling these women like Rebel Wilson and all these other plus size girls that, you know what, you don't need to worry, focus on your health, you don't need to focus on your appearance, just be who you are, love yourself the way you are, don't lose weight. And the reality is what that created was misery, because everybody knows that the more in shape you get, the better you are. And it's not that I'm any kind of paragon of shapeliness myself. I'm quite a chubbo at times, but I go back and forth. But even I know that there's a standard. Even I know I would be better off if I worked out and I tried to reach that standard. So really, if you want to change beauty standards for me, I don't think it should be cool to just be a very, out of shape person or whatever, and people should just think that's hot. No, I think there should be a common standard for everyone, and I think that everyone should recognize that it would be better if they were athletic, in shape, went to the gym, ate right, and achieved a healthy and reasonable weight for their metabolism, bone structure, and whatever. And maybe some people would be a little bit larger, some people would be a little bit thinner, but nobody should just be obese and think that that's wonderful. It's not wonderful to be obese. You can have a few extra pounds here and there. You can have what they call a dad bod or maybe the soccer mom bod. That's fine. But you should be always striving to achieve that sort of golden mean, that sort of, good physique that's, toned, and it doesn't even need to be thin, just toned. Just that we could tell that you're working on it, and it's fine. And finally, she's pulling her way out of this whole matrix that's been constructed by the SJW industrial complex of just love obesity. Just be obese. No. So, in other news, the Catholic bishops are going to make Biden stop taking communion. This is amazing because they never did this when he was working for Obama. And they've been so weak on so many other presidents and so many other Catholic presidents. But finally, they're going to tell them, hey, you can't be wanting to eat the fetuses and the babies and still take communion. Sorry. We believe that eating babies and fetuses is wrong. And you can't be taking the communion because communion is very important and it's supposed to be sacred. And if you're eating fetuses at the same time you're trying to take communion, that's not good. And so they finally stepped up and said, Biden, you need to go on a diet. You need to stop eating babies, dude. Very simple, very simple. It should have been done day one. They should have told him you can't eat babies. He didn't realize that. So that's the way it is sometimes. I mean, you think that there are standards that people aren't allowed to eat fetuses, that only certain foods are okay, but Biden didn't get that memo. So I just made some money on eBay. I think you guys just heard that it went cha-ching, cha-ching, and that's another thing I'm going to talk about here soon. Is the value of resale, the value of drop shipping, and the value of being your own man and making your own money in this new internet society of ours. It is so amazing. You need to start doing this stuff now. I'm making money. Everyone can make money. Everyone would be better off if we all made just a little bit more money. But guys, that's so hopeful, and I can't be that much hopeful because the world is still terrible. And we know this whole Russia investigation thing is still going on as federal investigators search Giuliani's home and office. And experts say it means he's in real big trouble, and there's no Trump to pardon him. So they're searching Giuliani's home and office in Manhattan on Wednesday, executing search warrants as part of an investigation into his business dealings in Ukraine. Former New York City mayor and personal lawyer to President Donald Trump is being investigated over possible illegal lobbying on behalf of Ukrainian officials and his efforts to dig up dirt on Trump's political rivals. Executing a search warrant is an extraordinary move for prosecutors to take against a lawyer, let alone a lawyer for a former president, writes the Times. While the warrants are not an explicit accusation of wrongdoing against Mr. Giuliani, it shows the investigation has entered a new and aggressive phase. And all this should tell you is that the state is going to hunt down everyone who was associated with Trump by any means necessary. And because Trump was able to pardon so many people and they were able to escape, Giuliani is like the last person that they can target. They just want to get that guy. They just want to get his goat. They want to take him out and get him and deport him to Ukraine or Russia, wherever they can deport him to. They want you to know he is not an American. He's not even an American citizen. He used to be America's mayor. He used to be the mayor during 9/11. But not anymore. Not anymore. Now he needs to be eaten. He needs to be destroyed. But that is the news for today. And that was my little exercise in talking about the events of the world and stuff. And if there's anybody out there who wants to listen to this, I mean, be my guest. I'm going to try to be as funny or as interesting as possible. I'm going to try to build this channel. I'm not going to give up on this channel. I think this channel is the real deal, and I want to be the real deal, and I think I can take it. And remember, guys, as crazy as things get, as crazy as the headlines get, one thing will always remain true, and that is that November 5th was an inside job. I'm Robert Thomas, the host of the Fawkes Report, and I hope I will see you again at the end of the week or next week or whenever I get around to making another podcast video so we could talk more about the news and make more little funny acronyms and talking in weird, funny ways about topics and talking about how Joe Biden wants to eat babies when he actually doesn't eat babies, but we're going to talk about those kind of things, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be funny. We're going to bring it back, and we're going to bring the world back. We're going to bring the right back, bring libertarians back. We're going to change things. We're going to change the landscape of the internet. And we could do it together. Let's do it together, guys. You and me. That's it. I'm out.